I ruined my perfect family when my wife caught me cheating with my boss and went to prison. Now, 7 years later, she's out, and I'm all alone with my kids hating me. I'm a selfish person. At least that is what I say to myself repeatedly almost every night when I hear the silence in my home. My children aren't here. My ex-wife hates me with good reason. My immediate family is divided, and I never stopped hating myself for what I did. My selfish act happened in 2015. I had just turned 39, and I admit I took my ex-wife for granted. My ex always told me that I was handsome on a daily basis, always wanted to be in bed with me, always took care of me, and treated me like her equal. She never treated me like a king or a prince. I was her partner. We've been married for 20 years by that time. High school sweethearts, each other's one and only, and it felt right. My family loved her. My sister looked up to her, and my ex helped her through a lot of tough situations. My ex was the one people called when they were in trouble, and she helped them. She was a good woman. Through the years, I gave her 2 headstrong boys. At the time of this, they were 18. I was conscious of my weight and felt self-conscious, and she would tell me that I was handsome. Our arguments were always few and far between. We talked everything out, but when we did argue, it was usually about the time in bed or lack thereof on my behalf and the things I refused to do in bed. It wasn't as if I didn't want to do them. It's just that I wasn't in the mood, and she understood. When I turned 39, my birthday party revealed the new me. I spent all year in the gym doing yoga and Pilates. My effort transformed me. I had always been a chubby guy, so to have a body that was tight and fit was a new experience. My ex-wife also went to the gym with me, but not as much. However, she went from 260 to 225 and was starting to shape her body. My ex-wife couldn't keep her hands off me, but for some reason, I still wasn't in the mood. It's not like she didn't try. We went to dinners, danced, and did regular walks. She always helped around the house, and I could see in her eyes how much she loved me. 20 years together, and she still looked at me with desire. I believe any man would desperately want that, but mentally, I just wasn't in the mood. At the time, I thought I was going through early menopause since we only made love maybe 3 times a month, and I was just a one and done. But she wanted more, and no matter how much she tried, I just wasn't into it. She mentioned couple counseling, and I refused. So now my selfishness comes into play. A new manager started working in my office a few days after my birthday. She was slightly younger and attractive, and for some reason, she took an interest in me. At first, I ignored her. Then it went from ignoring to casual conversation. Then she flirted, and I showed her my ring. However, after 2 months of constant flirting, I flirted back, which led to me telling her about my life. I found myself thinking about her more and more. This was an emotional affair. I know that now, but at the time, I felt high. My ex-wife suspected there was something off with me. We had a heated argument about it, one that I honestly believe I started. She went to kiss me, and I subconsciously made a disgusted look. It wasn't towards my ex. I was thinking about this woman when she leaned in, and I felt disgusted with the whole thing. At least that is what I say to myself. A week after that day, I told the new manager to meet me at a cafe so we could talk. I had every intention to tell this woman to leave me alone, to tell her that I couldn't do this. But before I could say anything to her, she kissed me, and my mind went blank. That was the beginning of our 6-month affair. During that time, I did things with this woman that my ex wanted. I was more eager, more willing. I was always in the mood. I believe it was because it was something new. My ex and I made love during this time, but not as frequently. I began pushing her away, nitpicking on the little habits. I even belittled her. I'm ashamed of how I treated her during that time. I only realized what I was doing when my sister came to visit me and told me that my ex confided in her about how depressed she was feeling and was thinking about filing for separation. She said she felt that I didn't love her anymore. She was starting to fall out of love with me. That snapped me out of it. So I immediately called it off, quit my job, and told myself that I was going to make my wife feel loved and wanted. I was going to fix this. I was going to be a better husband if I could. My AP showed up at my house with a box of my office stuff that I requested to have shipped. We spoke. She wanted to know what she did wrong, and I told her that I needed to fix my marriage. I told her to leave, and she wanted one last go around. I told her no, but she begged, pleaded, and like a fool, I agreed. We went to the guest room and went at it. I do not know how long we were doing it, but when she was on top of me, I felt her throb back, and there was a loud bang. I sat up, and my ex was looking at me. My AP was on the floor, and there was a large hole in the wall. I tried to say something to my ex, but her eyes were bloodshot, tears were flowing, and her lips were trembling. I could see she was in so much pain, and I felt so disgusted. I watched as my AP stood up and attempted to leave. My ex looked at her, and my AP told her that if she knew what was good for her, she would step back. So my ex attacked her. I screamed and cried, telling my ex to stop. Out of desperation, I jumped on her back, which resulted in me getting slammed to the floor. Everything got hazy for a while. Words sounded muffled. When I came through, my ex had my AP on her side and was on the phone. All I could do was stare at my AP's swollen face and the blood and teeth on the floor beside her. There was a loud bang on the door, and I watched my ex put the phone on speaker, slowly place it on floor, drop to her knees, and place her hands on the back of her head. The door opened, and the police came in and handcuffed her. The paramedics came in moments later. I soon learned that she called 911 on herself. Everything went to hell in a handbasket at the hospital. My father didn't utter a word to me. He just looked at me with shame. My sister was yelling at me. She looked crushed, asking me how I could do that to my ex. My mother was consoling me, telling me that it was all right, which caused my father to yell at her. Her family was furious. Her brothers threatened me, and her parents looked like they wanted to send me to an early grave. I approached my children, and they refused to speak to me. My sons couldn't even look at me. My AP was heavily injured and needed reconstructive surgery on her face.